And you're welcome back. It's day 2, like we started out saying, live coverage of the Ondo State gubernatorial elections. And while we await the official collation of results, we shift focus to the broader implications of the electoral process, particularly the inclusion of marginalized group and youth participation. So joining us this morning are 2 distinguished guests. Of course, Mr. Elvis Akpobi, who joined us during the week and the run-up to today, Executive Director, Not Too Young to Lead Initiative. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Akpobi. And of course, Mr. Bukola Idowu, who we had yesterday. Mr. Idowu is the team lead Kimpact Development Initiative. They'll help us unpack critical issues such as inclusivity, youth engagement, and also electoral integrity, like we saw from yesterday. Everything we saw from yesterday. So let's start with some very pressing questions. I'm sure Judith would like to take the first one here.
Gentlemen, once again, many thanks for joining us. We appreciate you for coming on. Let's get started very quickly and talk about, I'm going to come to you first, Elvis, and just talk about, the young people's significance and their role in elections. Now, when you look at the register, the voter register, we noticed that the gap, or rather the age bracket for youth is quite small. It's not very, it's below about the 40% mark, right? Which is around that, is hovering around that mark. So I have to ask you, is it often that there's a gap between, involvement in trying to get your PVC and then voting and their representation in leadership? What is your assessment of youth turnout in elections, especially now focusing on Ondo State election? How can this momentum translate into greater youth participation and representation in governance?
Okay. Ordinarily, aside electioneering, Nigeria today, the population of Nigeria today is overwhelmed with at least 60 to 70% young people. But if I married to Ondo State election, you find out that it seems as if we've given up, the young people, per se, have given up on the electoral processes of our country. Using Ondo State as an example, oftentimes you see cases where it seems as if the will of the people does not reflect reality. Before now, during election, you see people, mostly young people, always wanting to come out to get their PVCs to vote who should, make policies for them. But lately, people, aside the fact that there's no trust in the electoral umpire, often due to what has transpired before now, Nigeria at the moment is plagued with a lot of hardship. Young people are vulnerable. People go through educational processes, no job. You need to know somebody to get somebody. So young people are battling with trying to survive Nigeria. Let me use Ondo State, for example. An election is coming up. You see this, it seems as if it's being prioritized, because if you engage a common young person on the street, tell you that ordinarily it's meant to be an election. They'll tell you that they already know who will win and all that. So I think it's time, what you saw there, it's time for electoral processes to be threatening. It's time for INEC as a body to build trust between the electorate and what they do themselves. I'll take you to a video that I was ascribed to the barrister Deji, the activist. He said, and I agreed with him, that electoral umpires, rec officials, and anybody that has to do with electioneering in Nigeria should have no business being linked with parties. So we have issues like that, we'll have videos like that. The trust of the people reduces, and you see low voter turnouts, mostly from young people.
All right, now, let me come to Mr. We have Mr. Idowu here with us. Mr. Idowu, yesterday when we were talking to you, we had from earlier seen plenty of the demographic of people that were out to vote yesterday. We saw plenty of old people. We also saw the attention that was given to them, and that we were very grateful for. Most of them were actually made to have their ballots cast earlier than the regular young strapping people. However, there was a group of people that were missing. And in your research, we're wondering if you have noted this, that people are being marginalized, especially if they're living with some kind of difficulty physically. And we're wondering if there was enough consideration given by INEC or even in the general broad scope of elections in Nigeria to these people who live with disabilities. So in the case of Ondo State from yesterday, what were your observations with people who have or who live with disabilities? Were they given enough attention?
Thank you very much. I think I will start by smiling this morning because yesterday when we had that conversation, I remember I said we are likely going to have a very good election in terms of the preparation of INEC. And I also remember I said maybe this is likely going to be a good parting gift from the chairman himself. But let's leave that aside. We will come back to others. So when it comes to the person with disability on this election in Ondo State, so there are two things that I mean, we set up a situation room and we were tracking. There are two things I think that really affected this election as regard person with disability. Number one is that person with disability turnout was very low. That is number one. And those people that were able to made it to the polling unit, then you now have two set of issues. Number one, those people that were able to make it to the polling unit, some of them were not. I mean, they have difficulties in voting. Some of them, and I will explain. The other ones are in fact, you have issues with some of them with security agencies to be able to make it to the polling unit. That is outside INEC. Then when it comes to INEC, in some polling units, not all, braille ballot paper was provided. In some polling unit, magnifying glass was provided, not all. So, but you now find out that what happened in the other polling unit where you don't have braille ballot paper for the blind, where you don't have magnifying glasses for the people living with albinism, and these are the issues. So now this conversation has been on since 2015 about the making adequate provision for person with disability. So I mean, you would think we should be improving on that, but you still find out that you don't even have that. Then some of the ad hoc officials don't even know that when a person with disability votes, there is a special form for them to fill so that INEC can have, and then we can also have people, I mean, can have their data, you know, but in some instances, those forms were not filled. But again, when you also look at some of the things that are, hindering the participation of person with disability, you find out that in some places they are structural, you know, and they are not the fault of INEC. In some of them are fault of INEC, but in some places they are not. Now, I just saw on your on the screen now, you see the cubicle. If you can put it back, you see the cubicle, and that cubicle where they are likely going to, where people will thumbprint. So the first thing you will have to know is that somebody who is on a wheelchair may not be able, if that thing is higher than that of the person with a wheelchair, then you find out that the person find it difficult to thumbprint in secrecy. That is number one. This polling unit is even good, but in some polling unit you find out that ballot box and that cubicle was put in an elevated area in a primary school, because this polling unit obviously is not a primary school. So when you find out that somebody with a wheelchair, somebody with crutches find it difficult to access some of these places, and then in some instances they stay back. And why are they staying back? Because accessibility is difficult. Of course, INEC will tell you it is not their fault because they don't construct, they don't construct polling unit. They use public places. So it boils down to our systemic issue in Nigeria, because most times we cannot treat election issue, in isolation of the entire structure of the country. So for instance, now we should begin to talk about our public places, our public institutions should be disability friendly. You see, so if you have, If you're a person with disability, you should be able to access public facility. INEC doesn't construct public facility. Now, I was in US where I observed the election. That same cubicle that you have in right there in US is collapsible, is adjustable. So when a person with disability comes with his wheelchair, he press that thing and the entire thing move down to his or her level, and then when you are done, then you press it again, or the presiding officer press it for the next person to your height. So, and I think we should begin to look at those best practices. But with what we saw yesterday, it was the turnout was low, and you don't even, and we can also treat that in isolation of the entire turnout of the election.
Mr. Idowu, I want to say thank you for giving us that very vivid description of what it obtains like outside of the country, because, I mean, that's something that we need to input here, especially INEC. I'm hoping that they're taking note of that. I'm going to come to Mr. Akpobi now. Before I give you back to Judith, there was something that you guys were discussing regarding the youth inclusion. And we had a conversation yesterday with one of our guests. We talked about how the youth perhaps may not have been met on the platforms that they needed or that they were used to. Run up to the elections, we saw plenty of communication go through the grassroots system. It's Ondo State. We are aware, and that the larger part of it might not be as urban as what we are used to here in Lagos, Abuja, or maybe even in Port Harcourt. So grassroots is a good way to go. However, there is plenty of internet penetration into Nigeria now, whether you like it or not. The youth are using this as a method of communication, and it seems like the run up to the elections, there was not enough attention given to that platform or that segment of people. Am I correct or am I wrong? Do you think that the campaigning of the parties, all of them put together, was kind of like not tuned to be a youth-focused type of campaigning?
Okay, I don't think so. Let's not forget too that incumbent minister for youth is from Ondo State, and for me, I think it's not about the platform this campaign were done or the engagement that were done. I think it's about young people who they seem to have given up on the electoral process of our country. But from what I saw, the outcome of from what I'm saying, I think even if as we condemn, we must comment constructively too. I'll give INEC some kudos and tap in their back, but there's need for us to do more. Mostly with, if we don't build trust, we cannot make progress as a country. There's need for evolution on our electoral processes. Because when we see things like this, when issues like this pop up, from the results I'm saying, when we say, okay, I think INEC did well in this. There's no, even if we had issues of vote buying in some places and all that, at least, in all fairness, I think they did well. So if things like this can replicate themselves in other elections, you see people having that taste, that urge, that enthusiasm to want to participate. But if you already, as a young person, already have it in mind that these people they've selected, they play their gimmicks, they've selected who they want to be already. When they've not done that, that's where you see young people pulling back off electoral processes. But for me, it's not so good, because when young people who make up, let's say, the large mass of, the populace at the moment, shy away from the electoral processes, civic participation, you find the wrong people being voted, and they make policies that sometimes affect the same young people. So I urge every young person to go out to any election that's coming up. They should always get involved, so that the Nigeria of our dream, the Nigeria we want, Nigeria we hunger for, will get it right.
Judith, I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to pass across here too. And I'm going to talk to you about this now.
Right.
Let's take a look at our education system, for instance, using that as an example. Mr. Akpobi, Mr. Idowu as well, you're invited into this one.
Right.
Now, if you take a look at our education system, it seems that we're still teaching brick and mortar style. There's still a blackboard. These days they're white, actually, because you use markers these days. But you still go to certain places in Nigeria, you still find teachers using blackboard. They're still using the same curriculum I used 30 years ago. Judith, say nothing about my age. But 30, 35 years ago, they're still using the same curriculum. Now, the kids are more advanced now. They have more screen time. They have more ways of communicating and even learning, but our schools are still stuck in the past. Isn't it the same thing with INEC? If you're saying that you're campaigning, or rather with the electoral system, if campaigners say they're campaigning and they're going, you know, it would seem the same old-fashioned. If we're complaining of apathy when it comes to youth involvement in the elections, where they communicated with in the same fashion that they're used to, and these are the platforms that are all around us now. You've got TikTok, Instagram, new media generally. There was none of that, it would seem, and I stand to be corrected, in the run-up to the Ondo elections for yesterday. And perhaps, I'm wondering, maybe that is why there seemed to be a certain kind of youth apathy. Mr. Idowu, I'm wondering if you agree with me.
I have an answer, and I'm brimming with answers.
She has an answer.
I have a theory for you.
Oh, theory, yes.
And here's my theory. I feel like because there are two things here. Number one, if a method has worked for so long, why change it?
Has it worked, though?
But it's won elections. Do you get what I mean? So if a method has won for so long in terms of how you campaign, your campaign style, and we're so used to, because one thing about Nigerians is when we're so used to, we have a one-track mind as much as we claim not to. So if the system has worked, why change it? That's how we see things. And number two, it's a reflection of our educational system, just as you said. How many youth are on TikTok? How many of them are accessible on TikTok? How many of them have? How many of them are interested in
that
politics,
kind of material?
you know,
I understand.
in that material, they'd rather look at skits and so that's my theory in terms of
Mr.
that.
Idowu, do you agree with her theory?
Go ahead.
Yes, I mean, you are right, and I think again, let's put it in another perspective, and I think we attempt to respond. I mean, based on our own study that we have done. You know, one of our thematic area is electoral research, and we have done that. And so let me attempt to put this question in the right perspective. See, when we talk about youth participation, it's either we talk about youth participation in election, or youth participation in politics, or youth participation in governance. There are three layers that we need to look at: in election, in politics, and in governance. So let me start from the governance. Now, when we come about youth participation in governance, what is the data saying? What is it looking like in Nigeria? In Nigeria, we don't have more youth participation in governance. Now, the little you have is governors who try, or local government chairmen, or maybe from the federal level, who try to hand out few appointments to young people as SSA and the rest. Just few appointments to young people like that. So you have that, and that is very, very low. Now, as of today, you can count on the tips of your finger how many commissioners across the 36 states of the country that are young people. So if young people are not participating in governance, if the door to participate in governance is not open, then we have an issue. Let's come into politics. Now, youth participation in policies. Now, when you cast your mind back, what that bill, not too young to run bill, was meant to do was to remove age barriers so that young people can participate in politics. Now, what we have today is despite the passing of that bill, is what we have today, is that the right thing that is happening? No. And I will tell you the reason why is that though you have removed legal barrier to participation, you lower the age. At the end of the day, you now find out that what they did was you lower the age, you increase the financial burden on participation. So if I am in APC, for instance, and I want to, because you have lowered the age for me to contest for governor, for president, can I pick 100 million votes? Though you lower the age, but you increase the burden. So it is no longer about my competence as a young person. It is about if I have the money to engage the rest of the contenders who are former governors, who are present governors, who are veterans, and who are captains of industry in this. So that is one. Then when you now talk about youth participation in election, I think youth participation in election is high. And I give you an example. Do you know that Ondo State have 3,933 polling units, all of them manned by coppers who are between the age of 18 and 30? That is participation in election. So again, you look at the political parties. Many of their agents are young people. Now, you also look at even the political party campaign. Many of the people that drive that. In fact, let's cast our mind back to 2015. You know, the young people, I can say, rebranded Buhari and brought Buhari to the social media. The young people led a campaign of Obi. So, and you see that in politics, I mean, in election. However, when you now talk about young people participation in voting, that is where the challenge is. Are they coming out? No. And let me give you few data. If you look at the breakdown of the breakdown of registered voter in Ondo State, now 21%, I mean, okay, let's put it, youth is 35%. Now, and that is between 18 to 35. Then you now have the old people, which is 7%, 7.9%, approximately 8. Then middle age, these one are no longer young people. You now have 35%. Then you have the elderly, 21%. Now, pick the youth, 35%. Then the remaining set of people, you know, are the people that are determining the election, not the young people. And I give you an example. Do you know that young people, they are not much as part of the people that collected money yesterday in that election? Now, I agree with my guest here, because they lost trust. They don't want to come. But mind you, the people who are collecting the money and are determining the outcome of this election are the people with responsibility. They are married, the 7%, the 35% middle age, and then the elderly who have responsibility, who have who are going to pay bills. Now, that is exactly the issue we have here. So now, last data that we give you for you to understand, and this is the last one. Quickly. Quickly, okay. Just 3 minutes, and this wraps everything up. Now, registered voter in 2016 was 1.6. Registered voter in 2020 was in 2020 was 1.8. At the end of the day, to go and collect their PVC, that 1.6 and 1.8 dropped to 1.2. PVC collection. Then in 2020, that 1.8 dropped to 1.4. Then on accreditation on election day, it dropped to 595 in 2020 and 678 in 2020. In 2016. What am I trying to say? Then the total vote cast also reduced later. Now, what am I trying to say here is that you have 5 layers from registration to actual voting. So young people in the 21st century are not patient for that long, cumbersome process. If you want them to participate, please shorten the process. All these 5 layers, you register, you go and do physical capturing, you go for and queue for your PVC, then you queue for accreditation, then you queue for to vote, and then you queue. No, they are not ready. They want everything fast. That is why they get annoyed when their internet is not fast. That is when they get annoyed when when they go to the bank and the queue is long. Nobody want to get through this. So if you want the young people, provide alternative. Maybe electronic voting we do, and where you want to get the participation. But for young people who want to watch Premiership, who want to be on online, who want to do something differently within the entertainment industry, to go and queue with this rest of the long queue process, no, we have to do something better. Thank you.
Bukola, if there's one thing
that's the strongest piece of analysis I've heard all election.
If there's one thing I adore, it's just your data. It's always very sublime. And it really gives perspective in terms of what we're talking about. And you've made a very strong case for the younger generation And it's almost like you are in the same room with Gen Zs. You really capture their minds and how they think, you know, and how they operate, because it makes perfect sense. So, I mean, let me come to you, Elvis, right? Just hearing Bukola here and just reeling out the stats and helping us understand the perspective of the Gen Z. And also, it's very clear that there are financial and systemic barriers, right? Whether it's trying to participate or in politics or represent in politics, or even, you know, engage in their civic responsibility. There's some sort of systemic barriers that they face, right? What then will be your recommendations? Because the recommendation of the not too young to run bill was for more young people to participate, but then they increased the amount to get in, which is the ticket, either for governorship, local government chairmanship, or at the executive level. What then would be your recommendation for an organization that's leading, an organization like yours, the Not Too Young to Lead initiative?
I think I'll recommend independent candidates for our elections, owing to the fact that at the moment it's a money bag politics that is going on. But he talked about youth inclusion, mostly even in governance. You find out that most of the persons that are even, another question we should ask ourselves is, how these young people recruited? Are they recruited based on capacity and competence, or just because they have the right surname, or because one high-profile person was given a particular slot and he recommended anybody he feels that, will influence his opinion or that. Then these young people, again, that are given opportunities to maybe be in one position or the other, are they given the privilege to do their work, or is just virtual posturing? These are the things we should be asking ourselves. So for me, I'll still recommend independent candidates, because at the moment, if you don't have money, it's very, very difficult for you to win an election in Nigeria. And when you're poor, you become very, very vulnerable. Most of those people you see buying votes, because even if you subscribe to independent candidacy and maybe a young person gets a ticket and is on the ballot, you still find out that those that have the finances will still come give those vulnerable people electorate money, and you find out that sometimes even those young persons will vote against their own fellow young person just because maybe that person was not able to provide money for them and all that. But let's start with independent candidates. I think we'll get it right with that.
Let me come to you, Mr. Bukola. Earlier on, when we're talking about PWDs, persons living with disability, and they're represented in this election, you talked about the booth, right? And you said that that sometimes this situation is a societal problem, really, because our buildings are not handicap accessible. And then you also talked about the booth where, it's created for them. They can, bring it down and bring it back up. And you painted that scenario. And then you said that Ondo is, for systems like this, for example, states, the INEC have said that they use public facilities, right? But I'm also looking at the stat here, and I'd like to poke holes at this argument. I want us to have a very rounded 360 look at this, if you do not mind. There's a report from SBM Intelligence regarding the elections in 2023, the presidential general elections 2023, that stated that only 22.26% of PWDs had assistive aids, while 38.0.5 could not access voter education initiatives. And this is the report alone. Now, the Electoral Commission promised to make the 2023 elections more inclusive for people with disabilities. But with that start, that's really, really poor. It's not even 30, only 22.26% were able to get access. Now, we know that INEC received 313.4 billion naira from the federal government to conduct the 2023 general elections, and the Ondo and Edo State elections are off-cycles election from 2023. And so it begs to ask the question, how then did this money go? Well, and how are we not getting this booth and training the staff the ad hoc staff and the polling unit staff and all the other staff to be able to take this booth to this 3,000 polling units so that the PWDs can work. We understand there's a societal problem that we have, but should that be an excuse for INEC?
Absolutely not. That is not an excuse at all. You remember I said it that in some of the polling units, you don't even have braille ballot paper, you don't even have magnifying glass, and you don't even have provision made for a person with disability. And I think that is exactly what that research conducted by SBM is actually saying. For instance, in 2023, you are looking at maybe not up to 30% provision was made for a person with that disability. But this is the issue here. Let's first of all look at it from the societal point of view, and which I already talked about the other time, is I think we have to change our perspective about person with disability or the inclusiveness of our society. We have to look at that seriously. Number one is that we have to begin to look at what policy do we have around public institution, what policy do we have for them around data. As I'm talking to you, INEC does not even have 100% accurate data of the person with disability per polling unit. Now, when you say, "Oh, INEC can tell you," if you look at the disaggregation of the what is it called, of the registered voter, you have you still have a person with disability disaggregated. But this is what I am saying. In polling unit 4 at Ijomu in Akure, just using that as an example, there is no polling unit like that, but just using that as an example, can you tell us the number of blind person registered in that polling unit that will be coming? The person with albinism that we need magnifying glasses that will be coming to that particular place. It's all about data. It's all about your planning. So when you have this data scattered around, you should be able to know that, look, for this election, we will need 25,000. In fact, what the data is saying, that in Nigeria, you have over 26 million persons with disability. I tell you, if they were properly catered for, they will have determined the number, they will have determined the president in this country. Yeah. Because there is no president who have been able to win any election in Nigeria with 25 million landslide. So what we are trying to say is that these people, and meanwhile, we keep talking about low voter turnout. We are deliberately, disenfranchising this set of people. Now, so that data is very important. You don't just give us a generic data or for data's sake and say, okay, because people will ask you, out of the registered voter, you have this percentage. Now, let's break it down. How many of them are blind? How many of that we need braille ballot paper? How many of them are deaf, dumb, that we need assistance? How many of them are on wheelchair, on crutches? So how many of them are mentally, that mental disability? These are the people. What are the provision? Again, now let's even look at the way we train our ad hoc staff. I can tell you, you don't need to go and fact check me. I can tell you that most of the officials that are doing, that are on the presiding officer, are not also trained on the basics of sign language. So if a deaf person or deaf person comes in now to you, now how do you use sign language to even be able to communicate to them at least at the basic level? Is that part of what you train them as ad hoc staff to be able to do? No. When that person comes, you begin to look for somebody who can interpret, and then you find out that then it's like what we saw yesterday on the feed, party agents taking advantage to help them, to take advantage of them and to vote against their will. So it's a whole lot. So for instance, you are designing voter education curriculum, both INEC, political party, and NOA, Nigeria National Orientation Agency, even civil society, fellow civil society like us. What do we have special training for this set of people? So we have to change our mentality, now, for now, we have to change it nationally. We have to change it as Nigeria. Then we need now begin to move it to to elections.
But that 313 points, how many billion naira is still doing my head in. Since we're talking about societal issues, right?
The issue is that you have tried to help INEC this morning, because if it is the money from 2023, the amount is over 400 billion. And I can tell you what the budget for INEC was distributed into, components. So you have the one that goes into technology, procurement of technology, and then production of beavers. Then you have for the training of ad hoc staff. Then they have budget for judiciary, and they have excess of 2 billion naira for litigations. You understand? So the political party take them to court. INEC also hire SAN to go to court, and they pay them. So you have provisions for all this. But what percentage of provisions goes to a person with disability? You have given me a research document. Now we will do FYI and begin to hack them, and then maybe we need to look at it, because looking at that budget,
you have to give me credit for it too. You have to give me credit for that researcher. But Bukola, now that we're having this conversation, right? And I'm gonna throw this question to both of you. We saw an alleged case of vote buying, right? And I must state here that we have seen celebrities, politicians, civil society, NGOs, and even well-meaning Nigerians who have put out music campaigns, ads, television ads, radio ads. They have come out repeatedly during every election cycle to tell Nigerians to not sell their vote on any count. But for as long as I've lived in Nigeria, and since I've been a Nigerian, against my will, I have seen vote buying shamelessly and in open, as we've seen in the video that will be shown. Now, it's an alleged case of vote buying. We do not know what was going on in that video. But one thing is clear, there was some sort of transaction happening. And so I have to ask, can we ever eradicate vote buying in our electoral process? Let me start with you, Elvis, and I'll come to you, Bukola.
I think it's going to be very, very difficult, but we can flatten the curve of vote buying in our electoral process. Like I've always reiterated, and like I said, that it's a difficult time to be habited in Nigeria because of the economy, and people just want to survive. And despite I don't subscribe to vote buying, but there are people who are very, very gullible. There are some persons who see cases where policies are ordinarily primary role of government is to provide an enabling environment for its citizens and all that, make opportunities where they can, live their dreams and all that. But lately, you see people who have not seen, even civil servants that have not seen a particular amount of money for some time. And let's not forget too, there's high rate of prices in the market and all that. The average Nigerian will tell you that Christmas is coming very, very soon, because the things they ordinarily should get the government to provide for them, they go to churches lately and pray for them. Pray for those things. That's by the wayside. Then you see cases where 10,000, 20,000 is being shared. The election is coming. They see it as the only way to, make 1 or 2 naira and go back and sort their little needs, which they don't know the disadvantage of this, that oftentimes when they collect money to, vote for someone, it has a very, very negative ripple effect for a period of 4 years, because the policy of that person will determine how their welfare will look like. So people must flatten the curve of vote buying, must be deliberate about the welfare of citizens and electorate.
Since we're on the subject here, let me continue with you, Mr. Akpobi. If you said that we've identified that the vulnerable are being taken advantage of in this electoral process, then wouldn't it be safe to widen that spectrum of people who we are expecting to get votes from by applying formats where they can be met? This goes back to my argument regarding the youth not being met on the same platform that actually could help the whole situation. Because we've all here, all four of us, identified that, yes, it's people who have responsibilities that are being offered monies to buy their votes. If you have a much more aware spectrum of people who perhaps are not as vulnerable and know that they can effect change by simply placing their vote and not selling it, that would help the situation. But in this system, we see candidates taking advantage of that grassroots system that is not as aware. If you get what I mean here, I'm hoping everybody's on the same train. Judith, you're on the same train.
I'm on the same train. I think I stopped at one bus stop.
Well, I'll come back and get you.
Okay, come get me.
But it's the fact that the candidates are going to the grassroots because they know that that is where they can take advantage of the system. They can't take advantage of the system on a public forum like social media, for instance, because they'll be called out. So they've said, okay, I'm not going to do that. And this is to you, Mr. Akpobi, because it's right up your alley. I mean, not too young to lead. And I'm wondering how much attention we're actually focusing on this group of people who actually are the wider range of people when it comes to the populace of any state. The youth from 18 to 35 are more than 35 to 60, whether you like it or not. Please, your take, Mr. Akpobi.
Okay, yeah, I think it's key that, we try to change your mindset. And for me, it's as a group, what we do, it's basically to, empower and inspire young people to make better choices, and while we groom them to become the leader they desire for their country, their state, their local government, and all that. But it still will not take away the fact that what society celebrates multiplies. And oftentimes it seems as if while we do our work as civil society, while we try to mirror excellence, the society today celebrates things that they shouldn't, things that ordinarily we should be ashamed of. You see people, and you see young people, they always want to stick towards that, those things that are being celebrated. Yesterday, I don't mean to digress, yesterday on my way to a journey, I gave a young person in our conversation, he talked about pressure. I said, what pressure are you going through? He said that he needs to make money. I said, how do you make money? He said the pressure everywhere. Why? Because they see things. What people see, they become. They see young people who just, spring up from nowhere. Before you see that person is driving best, is living in the best of houses and all that. But they don't know these hidden battles behind that. So they want to become that kind of thing. So for me, in as much as we always want to tell them, get involved and all that, there are cases too where you see someone ordinarily, this person bought his mandate, everything. And sometimes you see people, even young people, tilt towards that and they celebrate such person. We see such persons too getting awards for excellence and all that. So I think as a society, we should shape mindset, we should change our culture. And there's a word one of my friends would say, we should break the old order by trying to celebrate the right thing, trying to do the right thing, and we should amplify the right thing often so that young people too will seek towards such trajectory.
Mr. Bukola, let's have your take on this. Can vote buying ever be eradicated from the process entirely?
Yes, it can be eradicated, but it's not going to happen anytime in the next 8 election cycles. And that is my view. It can be, but in the next 8 election cycles, that is like 4 years times 8. I don't see it taking off. And because, see, let's look at this. Assuming I know we are going to have this vote buying conversation, actually, I will have sent you the research we conducted on this aspect of vote buying. Is here. Now, it shows that we are trying to look at voter education against vote buying and the actual vote buying. Sure. So we trace that across over months. Now, we find out that the higher the voter education, the higher the cases of vote buying. So that tells you the people who are selling votes and who are buying, it is not that they are not they are not aware. They know that this is a criminal offense. They know in the Electoral Act that, look, this is an offense, that you must not do it. Now, they know very well. And that is why, even in this clip I am seeing now, that is why they went far away, even in a particular place outside the perimeter of the polling unit, to go and be buying and selling their votes. So they know. So what it means, this thing is showing us is that, look, education, when we keep saying we need to educate people, stop buying votes, vote for the person of your conscience, don't sell your vote, is no longer working. That is the truth. The education is no longer working. People are coming. In fact, we saw one woman leader in a particular polling unit in Owo yesterday who openly say, yes, we are selling, we are buying votes here for 5,000. Then we met another woman who said, yeah, we have voted and we have collected money openly. So they are already making it like a normal thing. So, but they know this is not right. Now, but what am I saying is that, look, the incentive for vote buying or vote trading is much more than the punitive measure we have. And when the incentive is more, people gravitate towards the incentive. And because punishment against the evil deed is not being meted out. Let me give you an example. And let me ask you a question, just rhetorical question, because I know we are pressed for time. From 2015, I don't want to go back to 2011, but from 2015, how many people can we say, how many person, any data, anybody at all, any news that, or from court judgment that we can say has been convicted of vote buying and is in prison or came out of prison or given a sentence or has been going in and out of court because of vote buying? None. Who buys vote? Politicians. Who win the election? Politicians. So you think they have the willingness to continue to prosecute the person? EFCC arrested, DSS arrested, ICPC arrested. They don't have. So let me give you, it's a systemic thing. Go and find out. There is something in law, in Nigerian constitution called, the lawyers know this, noli prosecutor, that is the Attorney General of a state and the federation have the power to discontinue a case at his will and say, look, he's against the state. So now let me ask you, I am contesting as the governor. They arrested my member political party of political party of selling votes. At the end of the day, EFCC or ICPC took them to magistrate court or took them to the state high court because that is the jurisdiction within which that offense was committed. And eventually I became the governor. The simple thing is to ask the Attorney General to discontinue the case, or at the end of the day to do poor investigation. At the end of the day, the judge threw this thing away. So now that is the incentive, because the political class are benefiting more from it. So it's not going to go away. Now look at the data of campaign. The law says, the law says 150 days to the election start campaign and then stop 24 hours to election. Now, these people did not start serious campaign until October, basically October 15, thereabout. So what are they trying to do? They are conceiving their money and making budget for every polling unit because they feel that is what goes on. So for me, we need to now we need to take the conversation on vote buying to how many prosecution have been able to do. So some people were arrested yesterday, both journalists, both the media, both civil society. We must keep tab on that to see that they are truly punished and to see to the case. But only that in Nigeria now, that case, that people arrested in Nigeria, the only challenge I have is that the moment by tomorrow now, if Portable cough, then that becomes a new news, and then we forget the entire thing. And then before we know everything, we forget the case. We need to do better. I tell you, we need to do better, because with the way it's going now, at the end of the day, if you are able to make internet fraudster money, you are likely going to, one day you will become the president, because it is about the money and you can pay the people. Then with all this, it's not going to make our politicians accountable, because they pay. They pay. It is not because they campaign, it is because they pay.
Yeah.
And it is because they pay the poor people. And is it deliberate that they kept them poor so that 5,000 will become big money?
That is a rhetorical question.
2 seconds.
That's a very good rhetorical question. I mean,
happened yesterday.
Mr. Bukola, we unfortunately...
A man took his wife, 2 children, all of them above 18 and they were in the university, took them to the polling unit, and this man collected 13,000. And when he was being interrogated, he said, excuse me, we came to vote. In 2 hours, 40,000 came into the family. We are going to eat well for the next 1 week. That is exactly what we are doing.
I mean,
we are doing to ourselves, because you win the election.
Mr. Bukola, I'm sorry. We have to.
Unfortunately, I mean,
but thank you for the very interesting detail and research that you put into your work,
right,
and also giving us all of this information. We are so happy, and also thank you very much as well, Mr. Akpobi, for your responses to all of the questions that we have given this hour. It has been a very robust hour, actually.
Might I just ask very quickly, Mr. Idowu, that I would like the report for the vote buying, if you do not mind. I will definitely ask the producers to give you my email address, if that's okay, please.
That's fine. I will share with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.